The Tim Heale Podcasts. Ordinary people's extraordinary stories.
Welcome to the Tim Heale Podcast. In this episode, I'm going to have a chat with Brigitta. So, Brigitta, if you can tell me where you were born, not necessarily when you were born, because you're a lady. If you can describe to me what it was like where you grew up, the schools you went to, and the education that you received.
Oh boy,
So,
yes.
all yours.
So Tim, thank you for having me. I was actually born, I live in the United States now, but I was actually born on your side of the world. So I was born in Germany. I was born in a little tiny village with 600 people surrounded by vineyards in the south of Germany. And I couldn't wait to get the heck out of there. But that's where I grew up. I had a very fun, I almost want to say protected childhood in this little village. I love going back and visiting my friends. Some of them still to this day live there. So you asked me,
whereabouts was it?
It's outside. Well, it's basically between Stuttgart and Heidelberg. It's outside of a city called Heilbronn, which was basically bombed down during Second World War. My mother.
We can only apologise for that.
my mother.
We didn't start it.
We're not going into that. My mother lived through the Second World War, and her city of Weinsberg was also completely bombed down. And we lived in that vicinity between Stuttgart and Heidelberg. Beautiful area, great wine. So
that's kind of down the Moselle, is it?
No,
that's the Moselle Valley.
No, it's the river that runs through Heilbronn is the Neckar, Neckar, Neckar.
Gotcha.
So there's
it's still a wine growing area.
Yes, it's a very well known wine grown area. The Mosel is a bigger area, but within Germany, that's a very known wine area.
I know. So I've been down there grape picking.
Yeah. I have done that with my friends. So we were little, and if you know anything about grape picking, you have these containers that you would wear like a backpack, but they are almost as tall as you are. They're maybe 3/4 of the size of what you are. So they have some for children and they have them for adults, them for women, them for men in different sizes. So my friends and I, we had them for us as kids, and we went and we helped to harvest the grapes, and it was fun because at the end of the day, we would all come together and we would grill bratwurst, and the adults would
drink
have wine. Exactly. So I grew up with wine. It was never, it was never anything that, you can't have any. I didn't like it. I developed a taste for wine when I was like 25, but it was always available, right?
Yeah.
So that's where I grew up. Went to kindergarten there. Kindergarten was across the street. So all of my friends and I, we walked to kindergarten, went to elementary school in the village over, did that through 4th grade.
So what was the village actually like? Was it a typical sort of German village with the sort of the Austrian type houses, or was it a bit more modern or old fashioned?
So the village was, this village where I grew up was Lutheran, and we had a Lutheran church. We had one Lutheran cemetery, small one. And then the next village over was a Catholic village with a Catholic church and a Catholic cemetery. It wasn't really that divided. And I didn't grow up with, the kids from the other village, they're Catholic and we're Lutheran. That's not how it was. I learned that when I got older. But yeah, there were old, we call them Fachwerkhaus with the with the wood that's exposed. But then there were also, like, when we came in, my father built a house for us. It was, back in the days, it was modern. And the school was relatively, the kindergarten and the elementary school was relatively modern. Behind my house where we grew up, there was a tiny little creek that ran through the village. And behind my house, you could not build. The land was only for agriculture. So it was just fields where they would, make hay. Behind the grass fields, there was a slope, and there were all apple orchards. And that's where our house was the only house that had my dad built a bridge over the creek. So my house was the only house that had a bridge over the creek. So I kind of felt in charge, like, look, if I don't like you, you're not going on the other side onto the meadow with us, where we, make forts, and in the wintertime we would sled through the apple orchards. And there were many times where I, sled against a tree, and my friends sled against the tree. And so it was a fun time to grow up. Like I said, very, very, I'm going to put it in quotation marks, protected, because we were free. Like, we could take the bus, and we would take the bus. We would walk. It was just free, and yet we were protected. So that was a beautiful time to grow up.
Fantastic. So moving on then, look at your middle school. You had to go to a different village for that. Right.
When it was time for me to go to middle school, I went for the first half year, and then my father was a missionary and a pastor for a free church. And my father was provided an opportunity to pastor a church in the United States. And I was already in school for a half a year in fifth grade in German high school and Realschule. And my father said, we're moving to the United States. And I'm like, I just started learning English in school. I knew yes and no and hi, my name is, and that was it. So we moved to a small town in Maryland, outside of Salisbury, Maryland, which was about 2 hours from Baltimore, Maryland, in the United States. My mother, my father, and my older siblings, stayed in Germany. And we stayed there for 2 years. My mother got really homesick. She really wanted to move back to Germany. I went to middle school in Maryland. And that was an interesting time. It was an interesting time because if you know anything about middle school is a hard time, no matter how you dice it. It's hard.
Yeah.
Children are going through puberty. They're trying to find themselves. I was trying to find myself. I was trying to, make friends. But here I am coming from abroad to a small
and learn English.
Town. And I didn't know any English. I looked different than everyone else. And I just started eating my own weight, basically. So I started just stuffing my face, trying to, eat my emotions. And I got really, really overweight during the time in the States. I remember going to the grocery store one of the first times with my mom. And I kid you not, I looked at the aisles of cereals and I'm like, why? Because coming from Germany, all we ate was muesli and maybe, some dense bread with butter and jelly. But there was this aisles and aisles and aisles and aisles of breakfast cereals. And I'm like, what? And then Pop-Tarts and all of the literally junk. And I ate it all. And because I want to try it all. That was not good. So we moved back. I repeated 8th grade in Germany, again in our small town. Repeated 8th grade. At that point, I hated school. I hated myself. I hated my teacher. I hated it all. It was not fun for me. I ended school in 10th grade, went on to university, got a degree in social pedagogy and education science, never did anything with it, got a job.
Whoa! You're racing ahead. Let's just come back a little bit. Let's
Okay.
just explore a little bit more of your school. Did you actually move back to Germany?
Yeah,
Did
at 8th grade.
did you
We,
8th grade? So you came back to Germany after spending 2 years in America.
yeah.
So your English had obviously come on quite well to be able to fit in at that time.
I needed to do something to fit in. So I made sure
Mm.
that my English was said I doesn't sound like the German, So I so
Yeah.
I try like I wanted to belong so bad, and it was so hard. It was such a hard time. It was such a dark time for me
Mm.
of not fitting
So
in.
so you managed to pick up English fairly well then, because I didn't detect that you had a German accent, and I'm
Yeah,
normally pretty good at that sort of thing. So
yeah.
you must have worked pretty good at it. So when you went back to Germany, then you were already advanced in English. So did you go back to the same village,
I
and
went
did you
back to
go
the
to the same school?
Yeah, I went back to the same school where I started 5th grade, which was in a neighboring village, a little bit of a larger village. And now I didn't belong to the friends group that I wanted to be friends with in Maryland, but my friends that I left back in Germany, they thought, me coming back, well, now she thinks she's all better than us, which I never did. That was a assumption on their part. So I didn't fit in with them either. Plus, in English class, which in Germany you have to take English. It's not You have to take English, and then you take another either foreign language like French or Spanish, or you can take the technical side, or you can do like home economics. So I did home economics, and of course I had to take English because it was a mandatory class. And I just kind of browsed through it. I mean, there were times where my teacher and I took over the class, and we were bantering back and forth because my teacher was British English, and here I am with my American English. And we would fight over, is it aeroplane or is it airplane? Or is it color with COLOUR, or is it color with COLOR?
Yeah.
Right? So there were many times where I, schlepped my Webster's dictionary to the school and said, but I am right as well. It's not just that you're right. I'm right too. Look, right here.
But you see, the Americans don't have the Queen's English.
No,
That's the difference.
that's the difference.
So
And there's
the
many.
Queen's English is the correct.
Oh, of course. Yes, of course. Why should I disagree with you?
And Americans are just obliterated the language. Two countries with the same language, separated by the same language.
and completely different. Absolutely. So, graduated from school. Thank God. Like, I was glad when I was done with high school.
Yeah.
And then
Did you have a graduation? Is it a bit like America would have?
at all, not at
You
all.
have a prom or anything like that?
No, we
Germans
played
are a
the
bit
big.
more stuffy, aren't they?
Yeah, well, that's what the Germans are known for, right? Um, well, rather me say it than you say it. Well,
Yeah,
we did
Germans haven't
play
got a sense of humour.
Listen, that's one thing that they're like, wait, you're German? You have a sense of humor. I'm like, yeah, I know. I'm one of the very few. We did play a prank on the school. And I think after that prank, they didn't allow any more pranks at the school. I think
What, you burnt it down?
the teachers were all really glad that we finally graduated. So yeah, there wasn't a big, my daughter just graduated, our youngest daughter just graduated from high school here in the United States on Friday. So it was a big to do,
Yeah.
with throwing hats,
Prom,
everything.
got a prom coming up, or they just had it?
No, she went to a small entrepreneurial high school, so they didn't have a prom. And she didn't
Oh,
want to go
so
to
she's
prom.
dipped out then.
Yeah, she
Been
didn't want
mugged
to.
off.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
So
what'd you do when you graduated high school then? What'd you do? Where did you go?
where did I go? I went
Did you
to
go?
I tried doing an apprenticeship in a hotel, I remember. And the hotel owners, it was a very prestigious hotel up in the mountains, about half an hour from where I grew up. And the owners had two poodles, and those poodles were not trained well. And I recall it was my job to pick up the poop of the poodles. And I was like, I did not envision my apprenticeship at a hotel being to pick up the poop of the dogs. So I quit.
Hmm.
I was like, I'm not doing that. I quit. And
Oh,
fast,
one question I forgot to ask. Did your dad come back as well to Germany? Did the whole
oh,
family move back?
my entire family came
Yeah.
back. Yeah. My dad became superintendent, for the church, for um, the middle. No, the first it was the Eastern European countries, and this was the 80s. So while I was still in school, we traveled with him to Hungary and to Romania. And mind you, this was still all before the wall came down. This was all, Iron
Yes, before unification.
Right.
I served in Germany during that period. I first went to Germany in 1975 to Munster,
Okay.
where I did a year there, and we moved back to the UK for 2 years, and then we went to Berlin for 2 years from 78 to 80,
Hmm.
and then we went to Celle in 1986, I think.
Hmm. Well, that was the year that the
So
wall came down.
89 came down. Yeah, 1989 the wall
89,
came down.
89. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, I remember it.
Yeah.
It was fun
Yeah.
times.
Where we
I
all
remember
didn't
all
think
the Trabants.
that we all did. I
The
never thought that would ever happen. And suddenly it just happened.
Yeah, one minute the wall was up, the next minute, bosh, everybody knocked it down and
Just
invaded
like
in
that.
their with their Trabants.
Just like that.
Yeah, I mean, I remember my time in Berlin very fondly.
Yeah.
78 to 80. The wall was still up, Hess was still alive. Yeah, we used to go over to East Germany quite a bit, and yeah, it was a real fun place to be.
I remember having in high school, I had a friend, Heike, who she was new. She came new to the class, like in, I think, 7th or 8th grade. And we're like, she talked different. We have a very strong Southern drawl in our German, where I grew up, very strong Southern drawl. And her German dialect was completely different, nothing that we've ever heard of. And we're like, where did you come from? And she never wanted to talk about where she moved from. And then after the wall came down, she opened up, they fled Eastern Germany. So she was afraid, and her parents told her, don't ever talk about where we're from, how we came here. That was like a big no for her to talk about. But yeah, that's crazy of how quick that
Because
went.
even now, a couple of years back before the pandemic, I did a tour. We came up from Munich, and we were going to Colditz, and East Germany although you've had reunification, East Germany was still totally different from West Germany.
Mm-hmm.
All the towns, there's a little bit of reconstruction there, but there's a lot of stuff that hasn't been touched. And then when you come back across into the west side of Germany, it's totally different. Lots more people about. Everywhere sort of new and been rebuilt and looking smart, whereas it's not in East Germany. And it's funny just how East Germany or Eastern Germany hasn't really caught up with the times. I did find that interesting.
It it's a lot to rebuild, starting with the streets and the buildings. And there's some grand buildings in the eastern part of Germany. Some grand buildings.
So let's move on a little bit then. So your first job, you wasn't over keen on. You mugged it off because you didn't like picking up dog poo.
Nope.
So what did you do next?
I went into retail. I worked in retail a little bit, selling fashion. That was fun until that got old. Made some good friends there. I started finally realize where I fit in and where I don't fit in. And I started realizing I'm not meant to necessarily fit in. I'm meant to stand out, which I think we all are, right? But
Absolutely.
as an adolescent, that's a hard lesson. And then I went to uni, studied social pedagogy, education science. Never did anything.
So where was that?
That was in Heilbronn. That was in the big city, closest to home.
So were you traveling backwards and forwards, or did you stay in Heilbronn?
I traveled back and forth. I had a car. I actually went to the States. Now that I'm fluent in English, and my father was the headquarters of the church was here in the United States. I was able to get my license at 16 here in the States when we were on vacation. And my dad then went with me to the Landratsamt in Germany, to the courthouse, and said, hey, we have a US license. Can we convert it into a German license? Now, if you know anything about Germans altogether, nothing is easy. Nothing doesn't
I know about German bureaucracy.
Huge, right? So they're like, and just doing your driver's license is like back then was 2,000 Deutsche marks. It's probably now 2,000 euros. And lots and lots and lots and lots of driving lessons. So we went to the courthouse, and my father said, here's the US driver's license. Can we convert it to a German driver's license? And they're like, yeah, all you have to do is get it translated. And I'm like, wait, what? Okay, well, let's get it translated. So I was able to drive with my father or with someone of the family in the car for a year. So until I was 17. And then I could drive officially by myself, which helped the family. And now I had a car. My dad got me a small little car. It was a Peugeot and little French car. And I was able to drive around. And so I worked a little bit on the side in retail. I went to uni, got my degree, made some really cool friends, lived the life. And then
So you didn't get a Trabant then?
What was that?
So you didn't get a Trabant? Because they were in abundance.
No. No, that's not what you wanted to be caught in.
They're quite popular nowadays, you know. They're a collector's item.
They are now collector's items.
So you finished uni. You got your degree.
I finished uni, didn't do anything with my degree, went to the United States to go to school again to become a travel agent. I remember I remember when I was 17, or maybe I was 16, and I asked my mom, I said, if I choose to go to uni and become at this point a teacher, is that what I have to do for the rest of my life? And my mom laughed and she says, no, honey, you're not ever going to do one thing for the rest of your life. She knew me very well, or she knows me very well. So I went to Atlanta to go to a school that would teach me to become a travel agent. That was in 91 and 92. And I fell in love with Atlanta, Georgia. I loved that place. I loved that it was warm because, if you know anything about Germany, the winters are long
I
and
do,
cool.
yeah.
But honestly, I'll share this with you in a second, but I've worked with a British company for quite some time in the future from what I'm telling you now. And I've been to England many times. I don't think I've been to England once where it did not rain. Not once. Not once.
If you want to nip over in the next week, it's not going to rain.
Okay.
Not in the south, anyway. We've got a great forecast for the next week or so.
I might just squeeze that in so I can say something different. So became a travel agent, and now I have this degree of being a travel agent. I am a certified IATA travel agent. And I was like, okay, now what? And I thought,
Did you go into the travel agency business?
I did
Wow.
in Stuttgart. So one of the first places, because I was working with my college counselor, and I'm like, so where do I go from here? And she says, well, what do you want to do? And I'm like, this was back in the days we still wrote tickets, Tim, by hand.
Yep.
That's
no computers back then.
I think that's why my penmanship now is so bad. I had to find something. So she said, what do you want to do? And I said, okay, so I don't like issuing train tickets. Hate that. I don't like tourists. Don't like that either. But I really enjoy doing, the visas and the business side of travel. And she says, well, so, do some research. And I found that American Express corporate travel was hiring certified agents in Stuttgart. So I applied. And because I was fluent in German and I was fluent in English, I immediately got the job. So I worked for American Express corporate travel for 6 years, close to 6 years. So that's when
that's the longest you worked for anybody?
No, the longest I've worked for anybody is myself. For my own companies. So I moved from Atlanta, which I love this place so much. I lived like in Midtown Atlanta and made some really, really cool people, made some really cool friends from Switzerland and Italy and all sorts of places, and also Americans. But I kind of, geared towards the Europeans. Moved back to Stuttgart, and that's when I got my own place. Moved to Stuttgart and got really, really good in the corporate travel. Climbed the corporate travel ladder within American Express, just to then find out I really don't like American Express. But that's okay. And that's when I got bored of doing that. And once I got really good at doing it, I got bored of doing it. I decided I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to get a marketing degree and study communications. So I jumped across the Atlantic yet again to go to school in Tennessee and got a marketing degree there in emphasis on public relations and communications, and had a student visa for that time. Came back for Christmas, one Christmas, and didn't realize that my student visa that I should have, I don't even know where I should have, promoted that I'm going away for Christmas and come back. Well, when it was time for me on January 3rd to come back to school at Stuttgart Airport, they're like, you cannot travel. I'm like, what are you talking about? I have a student visa. They're like, no, you should have, before you left the country, you should have kind of signed off. And I'm like, I didn't know that. How was I supposed to know that? Well, I'm only a travel agent, but how was I supposed to know that? So they wouldn't let me back in the country with that student visa. And I was like, well, shoot, what am I going to do? So it all worked out. We figured it out. I kind of missed part of that semester. Finished school, came back to Germany. And my friend, one of my best friends from uni, from the first uni, lived in Munich. And
München.
And I was like, ooh, I like Munich. I visited her and I was like, I like Munich. Because when we went to uni before, we were like, are we going to move to Hamburg together? Are we going to move to Munich together? So we traveled to Hamburg to kind of just tour it. And I was like, it's cold here. It's even colder than at home. We're not going to stay here. So Munich, I visited her in Munich and I was like, ooh, I like this place. I crashed on her couch for a few weeks, applied at a Australian/British publishing house for marketing manager. And again, because I spoke German and English, immediately got the job. And that's where I yet again climbed the German corporate ladder. And that's where I met my husband. He did not work for the same publishing house. He worked for a different publishing house. And he was a journalist at the time. I was in marketing. And if you know anything about publishing, journalists and the advertisement and marketing folks, they do not see eye to eye. Like they're playing on two different camps completely.
So did you meet in the Hofbrauhaus then?
No, we did not.
Over a stein of beer?
No, but my husband is a Bavarian. He is out. He grew up in a small village, not as small as mine, but he grew up in a small village outside of Munich towards Garmisch. So it would be, if you would just drive towards the Alps, that's
I
where
know Garmisch.
Yeah, that's where he grew up.
I put on the old Pusser's planks in Garmisch. Skied.
Yeah, it's a beautiful area. It's beautiful. It was breathtaking when I first visited it. And I met his parents. He introduced me to his parents relatively quick. And he proposed 3 weeks after meeting. And I knew.
Wow.
I knew that he was the man. And we got married in Munich.
And you're still together?
21 years. 21 years married, 23 years together. We actually have, in exactly 1 month, we have our our 22nd anniversary in exactly 1 month, June 30th.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it's quite a ride.
So then let's bring us up a bit more up to date then.
Yeah. So
let's move forward.
We met, we got married, we had a child. I said, when we had our daughter, I want her to go to a Montessori school, because when I went to uni the first time, I learned about Maria Montessori and the Montessori method. And all of the Montessori schools in Munich had like a 3-year wait list. I was like, oh, that stinks. I love my job. I love what I do. He loves what he does. And I'm like, wait a minute, I have a marketing degree. I have a social pedagogy degree. What I don't have is a Montessori degree. Let me go do that. So I went to school yet again to get a Montessori degree and opened a Montessori school in the United States. So my husband, my daughter, our daughter, and I moved to the United States yet again. And that's where we've been for the last 20 years. So our daughter was 18 months when we moved to open a Montessori school. We still have the school. The school still exists. We grew from 2 students to 125 students. We are forecasting 250 students for the next year in 20 years. And I'm out of the day-to-day operations. I am not in the operating part of the school since 7 years now. And it's constantly growing and moving and getting better and better and better. And so the school is in Tennessee. We moved to Atlanta to come full circle 7 years ago. And we have our businesses here. We have several businesses, communication, culture, crossing cultures with organizations. And that's what we do. That's our bread and butter. In the meantime, this little girl that was 18 months at the time when we moved from Munich to a small town in Tennessee, moved back to Munich, lives in Munich now. And our youngest daughter, who was actually born in the United States, just graduated high school. She's going to Munich in a few weeks and then going on to Italy to then come back and figure out, does she really want to take her position at uni that she has a full ride here in the United States. So we're going to figure that out along the way. And I passed on what my mother told me, because she had the same question for me. She said, if I go to uni now and I study this, is that what I have to do for the rest of my life? And I'm like, no, honey, you're never going to do one thing in your life. You're going to continue to become who you are.
Now, I have a question. Being bilingual yourself and your husband, obviously.
Yes.
What language do you speak at home with your daughter growing up?
German.
You speak German at home and learn English outside.
We wanted them to grow up bilingual as well.
I think it's quite important that I know quite a lot of people that do that with their kids. They speak. One week they'll speak German at school, at home. The next week they'll be English. The next week they'll be French, and then they'll back to German. Just rotate the languages around when the kids are grown up. So the kids are grown up with a bilingual already.
Yeah.
When they go to school, so they got a big head start.
Yeah, our friends that live right around the corner from us, the dad's from Belgium, so he speaks French, and the mommy's from Sweden, so she speaks Swedish. And their daughter grows up with 3 languages. She talks French to the dad, Swedish to the mom, and English when she's outside of the home.
That's great.
That's how you learn a language.
It is. And the earlier you can pick it up, the better.
People have asked me
language at my age.
When our children were little and we would go grocery shopping and they would hear me, someone would overhear us talking German, me talking German to the children. There were people that said, how did you teach your child to speak German? And I'm like, I talk to them in German? What are you talking about? How did you learn English? I mean, hello.
Yeah. Some people are funny.
Yeah. It's funny.
So bring us right up to date.
So up to date, I am living my life. I have been working for my own companies for the last over 20 years now. So that has been my best employer so far. Sometimes I have a heart-to-heart conversation with my boss. Sometimes she's a real bitch, and sometimes she's actually nice to get along with. I love the life that I live. I love the life that I was able to create for my children. That's why we created the Montessori school in the first place. And now I am in that season of finding more faculty and building out the faculty that I can continue to work on the business, but not in the business.
Terrific. So that's you right up to date then.
That's me in a nutshell.
Wicked. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Yeah, thank you for giving me a platform to share my story. Thank you, Tim.
You are most welcome.
The Tim Heale Podcasts. Ordinary people's extraordinary stories.